So in my last video, I did this drawing that you see in front of you here. And I stopped it there because it was about, the last video was about drawing as a sculptor, right? I just got away from the Loomis method and the things that people usually use when they draw on, they make these videos on drawing and so forth. So I got away from that, and I just wanted to try a different approach. One that's just a little bit different, but there's still a lot of similarities. And that is to draw thinking like a sculptor, where you're putting things in, taking things out. You're basically trying to envision the drawing as a lump of clay. And in that lump of clay, you're shaping it, you're taking things out, and you're putting things in, you're changing things. You're using your eraser a lot. Eraser is very important to this process. The eraser and having a good paper, a good sheet of paper where you can trust it to withstand a lot of erasure, whatever that word is, but stand a lot of erasing. So right now, I definitely will use the eraser from time to time, because the drawing is still open to changes. But what you'll see a lot of is me, like right now, I'm using the stump. I'm using the stump to spread the graphite around, to make to further make these values, right? Make these values. I don't want to say things like tone or shade or things like that. What I'm making are values, and then I'm going to work into them, either lighten them or darken them, and just play around. Just that thinking again like a sculptor. You darken, you lighten, you change things, you spread, you even the surface out. Like I guess the using the stump is be the same as evening the surface out when you're sculpting in clay, and then you're reshaping it. And because what happens is that there's these, when you put a shadow, then that means that the light area that it's next to pops out more, or there's more roundness, there's more of a feeling of volume when you're adding the shadows. Okay, so, and then one of the things to remember when I did the initial drawing, and at some point in this video I'm going to leave a link to the first video, just to make sure if you haven't watched that, you can watch it and you can see how I developed this drawing from the start. And over here I'm just working on the shadows, which is something that people, when they have questions about different things. One of the things is that how can I shade my drawings? It's not shading, it's how can I add shadows, or how can I add values, or how I can play with the lights and the darks, how I can read the lights and the darks. And that's what I'm doing. I'm reading the lights and the darks, and then I'm interpreting what I read on the paper. So, that's what generally what you have. So, and this I guess for someone who has the questions about how I can build up my shadows, this would be a good video. But with that, in the beginning video, what I did was I mapped out where the shadows are going to be. I mean, that was just a part of that. There's certain things I want to get done in the beginning. The first thing is to make sure that I draw the entirety of the image, and that I start adding the features in proportion to the big size of the head, and in proportion to one another, making sure that they all fall within the right place, and everything's evened out and everything looks proper, right? So that's one of the things I want to accomplish. It's just the where I'm putting things on the page, the size and the proportion of things in their relationship to one another. And then the other thing is, I'm thinking about, as I'm drawing, I'm thinking about, okay, this is going to be shadow area, so I might want to not put as much detail, or I want to indicate something that I'm going to say that I'm going to add some shadows in here and so forth. So I'm thinking about these things as I'm drawing. I'm thinking about mapping this out so that it's like in one sense you are taking care of the problems in front of you at hand and solving them at the other hand, and the other thing you're also thinking of, or I'm also thinking of, for the future is like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do later on to this drawing? So you need to consider where these shadows are going to be, or how I'm going to finish this drawing. So there's a lot of space in there to make changes. There's a lot of space in there to update the image when you add the shadows, and you observe them, and then you add them according to what you see. And so the whole thing about it is to have an understanding. What helps with it is to have an understanding of how light falls. How the light goes over the form. It's going to hit certain parts first. That's where you see the highlights. But at the same time, it's over his head. So that's the first way. It's coming down. It's hitting his forehead and his nose. And then falling on his beard, and it's casting a shadow going downward. And I guess if I read this correctly, it's a little bit to the left and down. Light always kind of unless you have an overhead light directly overhead, it's not going to fall straight down. If you're in sunlight or there's going to be like a slant to it. Or there's going to be some, it's not going to, you're not standing directly under the sun. So there's going to be a slant to it, unless it's noon, and I don't know, of course there's a situation that will probably call for that, but you have to read that when it comes. You have to understand the way the light is falling. So I'm not, obviously, this is a photograph that I downloaded from the internet. Great site called Earth's World. He has a Instagram as well as a website and a Facebook page where the guy posts all these photos that he takes at country fairs of people, and then posts it so that different people can use. And he's really generous with it. And what he does is that he shares it, and then he actually looks at the drawings that are made by different artists. And there's caricatures, there's straightforward drawings like I do. There's very I use it for practice. I use it to practice. I don't use it to create a separate piece or anything like that. It's either practicing gouache, practicing drawing, and so forth. But it's a great resource. So I'll put a link to Earth's World underneath. And but that's I didn't take this photograph, just to go back to the resource material. I just used it from the internet. So I don't know exactly. Well, let me take that. Well, I don't know exactly how the sun was falling that day. I can just guess at it from the photograph. Now, what I did to this photograph was I bring it into Photoshop. There was things behind him or all around him. I don't know if there were crowds or something like that, or something, like some kind of stand from the fair or whatever. But what I did was I took out the background, and so it would be easier for me just to having the isolated figure to draw from. And that's what I did with the reference. So, but yeah, so just understanding the way light falls, and understand and reading it in the reference that you have, so this is my best understanding of how the light was falling on this particular head. So again, like I said, a lot of this was pre-planning. And also, when I'm drawing at this stage, as in any stage, it's always open to changes, to the eraser, to making, to erasing things, to correcting things, to, there's a thing when I was in art school, right? The instructor wasn't always able to get around every student when the student had a question about his drawing, because he was helping another student, and there was kind of like a waiting time. So he said, well, while you're waiting for me, look at your drawing or look at your painting and consider these things. Make it bigger, make it smaller, make it darker, make it lighter. So, I mean, there's a lot of changes to make in just those four things, you know. But also, you know, there's a lot there might be like drawing changes that I make along the way, whatever helps to improve the drawing. But generally, you know, I'm still working from the large masses to the more particular masses. I'm not thinking of there's a lot of rendering, but it's the rendering that was put in by the outline for that I did for this drawing ahead of time. So some of that will disappear, some of that will remain. Right now, the thing is how to get the values set up in the same way that I did the features and everything in proportion to one another. I need to organize the values in the same way. And by organize, I'm talking about correctly reading how the light is falling. And also values are in relationship to the values around them. One of the things that I've learned from school, from one time an instructor looked at one of my drawings, he says, hey, now how can the shadow on top of the head be darker than the shadow below if the light is falling, you know, falling downward? So it's a matter of reading and organizing, you know, the reading and organizing the lights and darks and understanding them as you go down. And it's part of it, you know, like the shadow underneath his mustache has got to get darker. The lips and stuff has to be, you know, it's kind of too pronounced right now. And I'm looking at this in hindsight. You know, I'm doing a voiceover for this video, and I'm looking at this in hindsight. But I'm looking at this and I say, oh man, I hope I made that correction. I got the drawing tucked away in somewhere else. I think I did this on a drawing paper, on a drawing pad. So I got it on one of my sketchbooks, one of my drawing sketchbooks, and I can look at it afterwards. But if I didn't make that correction in this video, that's a correction that I can make when I view the drawing. So, I mean, there's always stuff to change, always stuff, you know, you're always evaluating. And then actually, even after the drawing is done, say there are times where I look at a drawing a day later, a week later, a month later, even a year later, and sometimes when it's a year later, I'd say, well, you know, time has passed and that's where I was at the time. I know better now. But sometimes the drawing can just improve with a little correction, and so I make that correction, and then the drawing is better for it. You know, sometimes I just evaluate the drawings that I have. It's interesting. There are some artists who work for things on years on end. Rembrandt is one of them. Leonardo da Vinci's painting of, I believe, the Mona Lisa, or there's some other work where he kept it with him all his life, and he made corrections and changes as he continued to grow as an artist, and that's what Rembrandt did too. So there are stories of painters who constantly make corrections on their work. One who was notorious for that was Degas, who would be at a gallery, and where, you know, his paints were hanging at the gallery, and people were viewing it, and somebody bought the painting, and he would say, you know what, I would like to borrow the painting from you to make some corrections. So the people would generously allow the artists to take the canvas and make corrections, and some of them were horrified because what they got back was so different from what they initially had, you know. And I think that's a hard one, when you paid for something because you liked it, and then what you got back, you're not sure if you're going to like, or you lost the painting that you like, you know. So, but anyway, that's what the guy did. The guy was constantly reworking, trying to improve on what he did, and sometimes it wasn't a happy situation for the buyer. But I think it's fine to do it when, as an artist, you still have the work, and you want to change up on it, you want to revise it, and so forth. I think you have every right to do that. But I think once it's sold, it's sold. If the person allows that, then which I don't think anybody does now. I think that's a rare situation when that worked back then, but it won't work now. Anyway, that's that's just to say that the drawing is constantly open to revision, and I'm constantly working and reworking things in order to improve upon the drawing. Now I'm going to speed this video up because there's a lot of what you're seeing is some of it is going to be repetitive. It's going to be a lot of going back and forth and changing things. And what really is important, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that I started the first video with the idea of drawing like a sculptor. And I set up to get the drawing this far by that thinking. And in this way, I'm still doing it, but I guess it's less obvious at this point because most of the drawing is down. And all what I'm doing at this point is I'm not just adding the values, but I'm also refining the drawing, deciding, I generally starting with maybe two values here, and then working up to what's going to be the darkest and what's going to be the lightest. Now there's different ways of working that I want to introduce, and the next video that I'm going to introduce is an idea of working like a sculptor, but with doing what you would call like mass drawing. And like I did that before on an earlier video, and it was a way that I used to draw like every time. But it's a way that is closely connected with painting. And what I did with what I'm going to show in the next video is I'm going to take this whole idea of doing mass drawing, and also working like a sculptor, and use gouache and do a grayscale gouache painting based on that idea, and build my drawing that way. And to further enhance this idea of drawing like a sculptor and thinking in mass, I'm not going to do like a preliminary pencil sketch over which I'm going to paint. I'm just going to go right ahead and just go straight into the paint and think of it that way. That's kind of the way I painted when I was in art class, and we were working for the model, and I painted in oils. And what I did was kind of like this alla prima approach of, just alla prima means all at once. It's just painting the whole thing, it's painting whatever you decide to paint, painting that whole thing all at once, right? So, and it's the mindset that I have. It's kind of going along with everything else with the mass drawing. It's a quick way of working. Just, doing things more of like Loomis method, or thinking more of the construction of the drawing and so forth, doing that first, and it's a longer way of going about this, but at the same time there are benefits to that, and there's benefits to mass drawing. There's the benefit to construction is just the idea that everything is placed where you want it to be, just the discipline that you need to have to take your time to make sure that the drawing is set up right. The benefit to mass drawing is that spontaneity, that breath of fresh air. One of the things that I've seen that you get from mass drawing is that there's a life and there's a personality that comes through. So much more, I think, than when you do just the construction. And the construction, don't get me wrong, is great, and you're guaranteed a good drawing. But one of the things that people struggle beyond that is a likeness. And I think one of the things that goes along with the likeness is the idea of a living, breathing person that you are putting forth in paint or in graphite or whatever medium you use. And that's the whole idea of drawing, is not to do a perfectly rendered photograph of the image. And I'm talking about, this becomes more important, especially when you do things that are like portraiture, especially when you're drawing people. And you want to, I would take an inaccurate, but an inaccurate but a very believable drawing done like in mass drawing than a drawing done with construction that's kind of like stiff and like that has no personality. Now there's people who can do the construction drawing and give their drawing that life and personality that it needs. But I see also there are times where they get away from that and add things and start you start thinking both ways. It's not like you think one way. You start thinking both ways. It's just like it's like you turn the switch on and you turn it off. And then you start working another way, you turn that switch on. And I think that, and that's how you got to think about your drawing. I think that when it comes to deciding how I'm going to work at a particular drawing, it's not that I'm stuck to a particular method. It's that I'm trying to figure out, I will try to figure out first, what does the subject need? How can I best interpret what I see on paper and in a way that's best for that subject. So it might involve doing construction drawing, it might involve mass drawing. Usually it involves part of both, or it might involve a more spontaneous way of doing something. Just thinking about not just the mass drawing, but the drawing, drawing like a sculptor or painting like a sculptor. It might involve something that's more classical, where you're going for classical forms and putting those things down and developing your painting that way. Or it could be something that's more spontaneous and more alla prima. It just depends on what the subject calls for. It's good to be versed in as many things as you can as far as how to construct a painting or how to construct a drawing or how to put a drawing together, rather than being so dogmatic about just being one way of doing things. There's not just one way of doing things. There are ways that existed long, like I said in previous videos, there's ways that existed of doing things long before Loomis or Riley or whatever, Bridgman or whatever other instructor came along. But and this is not, again, not to put down those things, those teachings, but to say that there are options, and it's helpful to know what these options are in order to, one, improve your experience, as far as being the artist who's drawing. It enhances your own experience, because this is as much for you. It's first for you before it goes out into the audience. First, it has to be something that you enjoy and thoroughly enjoy doing and learn from and grow in. And it's an experience for the artist to work on something. And then, you see how your audience reacts to that afterwards. So there are people who do it the opposite way. They are thinking of marketing, and they're thinking of how to create an image that would sell, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm thinking that you can do that, but you can also think of your growth as an artist and thinking of how you challenge yourself, how do you create an image that is the experience of making it is pleasing to you, and it changes your perspective on things, your perspective on the way you work, your perspective on art, the perspective on your art, and how that helps you to grow as an artist. So all that is to say that, you know, it really has to be an experience and it would help to not be so dogmatic about the way you do things, to learn new things and to bring things into the fold. You know, there was a way of learning that we had in high school when I went to the High School of Art and Design, and that's where I first started drawing from the model in high school, and painting in oils in high school. You know, we had an early morning paint class, and we met, and we painted from the model. And I went on from there to other schools and stuff like that. We did the same thing as far as working from the model, but you know, the important thing is not to be so dogmatic about one way. There's different ways of learning things. I'm trying to get back to the point that I was originally making, and that is to say that sometimes not in just the doing of the thing, but also in exploring art museums, looking at the works of different artists, and then incorporating those things. You know, if it works, my teacher used to say, if it works, keep it in the act. You know, just finding out, learning things, and finding out what you can use to add to your art to further improve upon. So it's some time had elapsed from the last clip to right now, and I noticed that as I examined my drawing that there are some mistakes. The first thing that glared out at me was that the lip is visible where you see in the reference the lip is not visible, the lower lip, right? And because there's a shadow underneath his mustache, and I kind of ignored the shadow. One of the things is that I when you're drawing from reference, and sometimes when you don't see what you believe is there, you in your mind you have the option of putting that in based on what you know it's there, and not following what you see. That might not be so bad depending on depending on the reference, depending on what you want to do with your drawing. Over here, for me, in terms of being honest with myself, was that I was more concerned at this point with the lights and darks and organizing the shadows, and I didn't do that well. And there, as I looked at this drawing, there are still some more faults, a lot of things that I needed to change and improve upon in the drawing. Still going back to that idea of working as a sculptor, because I'm using my eraser, I'm just going in, taking things out, modifying things, and continuing to do that until I feel like there's nothing more to do with the drawing. So even after doing this clip, right, at this portion of the video, because time had elapsed, right? It takes time to do these things. It takes time to make these video clips and the drawing, and then it takes time to edit them and organize them in the program. Then it takes time to do the voiceover. And so in between, they're like 2 clips before this, 2 separate things that I had to edit before this that is included in the entirety of this video. So this is the 3rd clip that I'm editing, and so, you know, time had elapsed, and between all that time, so many things had changed, and even in terms of the way I'm drawing, because I've learned new things. I have a habit, a daily habit of drawing, and my habit has always been not just to draw every day, but to strive to make my drawing better than my last. And I spent a lot of time in my sketchbook. So I spent a lot of time not just practicing, but having these, looking through books and studying, really studying the face, studying the features, studying the structures of the head and so forth, and trying to understand what I thought I knew. So this is just my whole process of growing and learning, and it never stops. There's a illustration to Norman Rockwell did. This is a kind of a pen and ink, cute, cartoony thing where he titled it Cradle to Grave, and where he did a picture of himself as a little baby in diapers with a pipe in his mouth, painting his Saturday Evening Post cover, right? And then he draws himself as a teen doing the same thing, and he draws himself all the way till he's put in a box, and as he's being put in the box, he's got his hand out and he's still painting. So the whole idea is that, learning never stops, the work never stops, and it's something that I'm looking forward every day to constantly start drawing. I had a text with my brother where I shared with him where it's, at my age, I'm 60 now, it's difficult for me to sleep because I still want to do more. And, I get to a point where I'm tired and I can't do anymore. But I still, I go to bed late because I still want to draw. I still want to paint. I still want to make sure that not only do I put in my practice for the day, but I'm learning something, and I'm preparing. By doing that, I'm preparing myself for the next day, right? Because I'm going to make sure that I'm going to keep going, so I'm not rusty the next day. I can just continue on into drawing, and thinking about, gathering my books together, because I over the years I've collected books, right? And I took the time to look through them, to learn from them, to make notes in my sketchbook about what I'm learning and so forth. So it's just a constant process of growing, that after time had elapsed, I looked at this this drawing that I was doing. I looked at this video as I'm doing the voiceover. I'm like, wow, there are still some changes I need to make. So I take out the drawing and I begin to make those changes. Now I don't make another clip, but all of this is just to say that it's learning. It's it's a constant thing, and there's a time to give up on a drawing, and there's a time to fight for it. My instructor always used to say, a lot of times the drawings that you fight for become more precious. They become more of the thing that you feel the most proud of. It may not be the best drawing that you've done, but the idea that this drawing means that you fought for something, and what you fought for will show in the next thing that you do. The improvement will begin. It's like a thing that continues to grow, even just as you exercise. As you exercise your knowledge, and you put these things down on paper, and it becomes a thing that continues to grow, and you get better. It might not show at the particular moment, but it shows down the line. And I know that's true. I know, a lot of people have been making videos about on YouTube about you don't need to draw every day. Look, it's a good practice. It's a good practice. People practice daily when they want to be good at something, and things come up. There are other things that could get in the way of that, and that are life, and that's just life. But if you have the ability, and to draw every day, and to draw with a purpose, not just to aimlessly draw the same thing, the same hand, the same, I don't know, whatever, every day, or the same stylized character every day, but learn from life. Learn from life. Study books. Study, I don't know, just go to the museum and look at the things that are at the museum, and aspire to be that great. You know, you have to aspire to be something more than yourself in terms of your ability to draw, so that you can communicate the things that you want. And if you're at that level, then there's nothing left to do. Then, you know, what's the point? If you've reached the point where there's no more growth, which is ridiculous to, you know, to contemplate, then, you know, what's the point in doing the next thing? You've already done whatever you could do, right? I don't believe in that. I believe that there's always room for improvement, always room for growth, always things to learn, always things to change, and so forth. So, you know, it should be an adventure every day. And there are so many things that prevent us from learning the things that we want to learn at the moment. There's some things could be our own character. Some things could be our just ability to understand what's being shown to us or what's being taught to us and so forth. But if you continue, and if you want to make breakthroughs in that, you will see them if you're patient enough to continue. So all of that is to say that I continue to do this drawing. I continued to make corrections up until the point where I couldn't correct it anymore. And I said, you know what? It's time to leave this alone, and whatever lesson that I learned from this, I bring it into the next drawing. It's not a bad drawing. It's not my best drawing, but it's something that I can definitely say was an experience that was worth having, so that I can bring it into the next drawing and make that one even better. So with that, you know, I'm just going to close out this portion, or close out this video. And what I'm really excited about is, after I post this video in a week, I will post another video, and that video would be all on taking this idea, but instead of using pencil, I'm going to use gouache, and gotta just edit that video and get it ready to show you guys. I had a fun time doing it, and it was definitely worthwhile. I posted the final image on my community page over here on YouTube, so if you guys want to look at that, you can see the final image, and I will post that video in another week. Okay, so that will be there for you guys. And when I say another week, what I'm really shooting for right now is to post videos on Tuesday. So every Tuesday you will see a new video on my channel, and right now this will be the end of this one, and I'll show you guys the final drawing. And I continue to make changes on it. And one of the things that I look at this particular drawing as is an opportunity to learn, to be more deliberate. Well, I wasn't very deliberate in the beginning, but I guess the more deliberate I am in the beginning, and the less of guesswork. And I know I started this out with drawing like a sculptor, and I still think that's valid, but even then, it's not being haphazard, but being more deliberate at the beginning. So if you're more deliberate at the beginning, and there's less changes you have to make towards the end. So I just needed to pay more attention to some things. As far as this drawing goes, I think it's okay. I don't think it's the best drawing I've done, but I don't think it's the worst drawing I've done. But again, I will be here next Tuesday with a new video, the one on gouache, and that one I was very, very happy with, and I'm looking forward to posting that video. And like I said, you can count on a new video every Tuesday on this channel. So if you haven't, subscribe and give a like. You know, I'm thanking you guys for, if you followed me this far into this video, for following this video this far. And I hope that it was a good experience for you, and that you guys will be back next Tuesday. All right, bye-bye.